Episode 1: The Cabin in the Woods. Jack had never been one to believe in ghost stories. A no-nonsense guy, he figured most of what people said about haunted places was just imagination or superstition. But when he agreed to spend the weekend alone in a remote cabin in the woods, away from the hustle and bustle of city life, he didn't expect the darkness of the forest to feel like it was alive, watching him. And he definitely didn't expect to feel a cold, invisible hand around his throat as the night dragged on. Jack had worked non-stop for months, and the idea of getting away to a secluded cabin in the woods sounded like the perfect solution. No phone signal, no distractions, just the peace of nature. His friends had warned him about the cabin, but they always joked about it. "It's been abandoned for years," one of them said. Not much to it. When Jack arrived, it was exactly as expected. A small, rustic cabin surrounded by towering trees, deep in the woods, miles away from the nearest neighbor. The first night was calm, just the wind rustling through the trees and the crackling of the fireplace. Jack sat back, relaxed with a drink in his hand, thinking this might be the best decision he'd made in a while. But when the sun set, something shifted. The air grew colder, and the wind seemed to howl louder. Jack brushed it off, convinced it was just the isolation playing tricks on him. He turned on the TV, but the signal was fuzzy, nothing but static and broken images. So he turned it off and went to bed. Around 2 a.m., Jack woke to the sound of something heavy dragging across the floor of the cabin. His heart leapt in his chest, his mind racing to explain the sound. Was it an animal? He lay in bed still, listening as the dragging sound continued. It was slow, like something heavy being moved inch by inch across the wood floor. His eyes flicked to the door leading outside. The cabin was locked up tight. But why did it sound like something was inside? He waited, too scared to move, but as soon as the sound stopped, a new sound took its place. A soft whisper, just low enough that it was almost impossible to hear clearly. "Jack." The whisper echoed through the cabin, but there was no one there. His blood ran cold. He quickly turned on the bedside lamp, but the room was empty. Only the empty wooden walls stared back at him. He didn't know whether to check the rest of the cabin or just leave. But the thought of venturing out in the dark, knowing the woods were just beyond the walls, paralyzed him. The next night, Jack was determined to enjoy his time away from the world. He locked the doors again, pulled the curtains closed, and tried to sleep. But sleep wouldn't come. The silence was too thick, too heavy. The same whispering voice from the night before came again, only this time it sounded clearer. "Jack, why are you running?" He bolted upright in bed, his heart racing. The voice had come from right outside the bedroom door. There was no explanation, no rational way to explain it. The whispering continued, like a soft chant that seemed to grow louder by the second. He jumped out of bed, grabbing a flashlight from the nightstand, and slowly moved toward the door. His breath caught in his throat when he saw the shadow at the bottom of the door. It was as though someone was standing just outside, waiting. He threw open the door, shining the flashlight down the dark hallway. There was nothing, only the heavy silence of the house. But then the temperature dropped drastically. Jack could see his breath in the air, though the house had been warm moments before. His mind raced. "It's just the wind, just the wind," he muttered to himself, but deep down, he knew something wasn't right. The next day, Jack tried to leave. He packed his things ready to go, but when he went to open the door, it wouldn't budge. Panic set in as he pushed harder, but the door was sealed shut. No matter how much he pulled, the door wouldn't open. The whispering started again. Soft at first, like it was coming from the walls, then louder and more urgent, as if something or someone was trying to communicate with him. "Jack, you're never leaving." The lights flickered. The cabin felt like it was closing in on him. He stumbled back, his breath shallow. The air grew colder with every passing second. His pulse thundered in his ears and the whispers grew into a chant. "Run, Jack! Run!" The floor beneath him creaked and he looked down, eyes widening as a shadow moved beneath the wood, circling his feet. It was as though something was crawling beneath the floor, getting closer. He backed into a corner, frantic now. The floorboards began to split, the shadow rising higher. Jack ran. He didn't know where he was going, only that he needed to get out of that cabin. He threw himself at the door again, this time with every ounce of strength he had. Finally, it gave way, and he burst into the night air, gasping for breath. But just as he stepped into the dark forest, he felt it, a cold hand wrap around his ankle, pulling him back toward the cabin. He screamed, kicking at the invisible force that gripped him tighter and tighter, dragging him toward the darkened house. "No!" Jack cried, but the hand held firm. He could feel the ground shifting beneath him, like something was pulling at him from below. And just like that, the whispering stopped. Everything went still. The hand released its grip, and Jack scrambled back to his feet, heart pounding. He turned toward the cabin only to see the door slam shut behind him. The whispers faded, replaced by silence, but the fear never left his chest. Jack never spoke of what happened at the cabin to anyone. He left that night, walking back to his car, never once looking over his shoulder. But to this day, the whispers still haunt him. Sometimes when he's alone at night, he hears them faintly, calling his name, urging him to return to the woods. Do you think Jack was imagining the voices and strange occurrences? Or do you believe there was something truly sinister at that cabin? What do you think was behind the whispers? Have you ever been to a remote place where you felt a strange presence? What happened? Share your stories in the comments below. If you were in Jack's shoes, would you have left immediately, or would you have stayed to uncover the truth behind the haunting? Let me know your thoughts. If you enjoyed this terrifying tale, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more spine-chilling horror stories. Turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. And remember, sometimes it's best not to go looking for what's lurking in the dark. Episode 2, The Haunted Basement. Marcus had been a night custodian at the school for just under a month, still getting used to the strange hours and the quiet emptiness that came with the overnight shifts. It was a job he had taken out of necessity, but it wasn't as easy as he had hoped. Most nights the quiet didn't bother him, but tonight was different. The air felt heavier, like something was waiting in the shadows, something he couldn't explain. And yet, the one place he'd been told to avoid, the basement, was where he had to go. Marcus had always preferred working alone. The night shift was ideal for him. There were fewer distractions, no bosses breathing down his neck, and, best of all, no students running through the hallways causing chaos. When he'd been working the overnight custodial shift for 3 weeks, cleaning classrooms, mopping floors, and setting up for events the next day. But tonight, the school felt different. The janitor's closet was stuffy, the smell of bleach and cleaning supplies hanging in the air as he grabbed his supplies for the night. He glanced at the clipboard pinned to the wall, a list of tasks. It was a pretty standard night. Mop the hallways, empty the trash cans, and clean the bathrooms. But then he saw the note. Chairs need to be brought up from the basement for tomorrow's meeting. Don't forget. Marcus groaned. The basement was a place he'd been warned about, a place everyone avoided. It was a sprawling, half-finished space beneath the school, filled with forgotten junk, old furniture, and strange noises. The older custodians had mentioned the basement in passing, always with a hint of unease in their voices. They joked about it being haunted, but there was always an edge of seriousness in their words. Just go down there, grab what you need, and get out, Marcus muttered to himself. He wasn't superstitious, but tonight something felt off. The air was thick with something unspoken. He grabbed his flashlight and made his way toward the basement door. The basement door was heavy, its rusted hinges groaning as Marcus pulled it open. A blast of cold air hit him, the musty scent of the basement flooding his senses. He hesitated for a moment before stepping inside. The light overhead flickered, casting long shadows across the concrete floor. The basement was dimly lit by a few buzzing, flickering bulbs. It felt like stepping into another world, a place frozen in time. He made his way down the narrow concrete steps, the sound of his boots echoing in the empty space. The basement stretched ahead like a labyrinth, filled with rows of storage rooms and hallways. The air was damp, and the walls seemed to close in around him, as if the basement was holding its breath. He flicked on his flashlight, the beam cutting through the darkness. The basement seemed even bigger and more intimidating at night. The shadows were longer, the silence more oppressive. He wasn't sure if it was the weight of the building or his own nerves, but something about the basement made him uneasy. Marcus headed down the hallway toward the storage room where the chairs were kept. It was the same place he'd visited countless times before, but tonight it felt different. The door to the room was slightly ajar, and as he pushed it open, a musty, almost sour smell hit him. He paused for a moment, taking in the dimly lit room. It was filled with old desks and chairs stacked haphazardly. Outdated textbooks were scattered across the floor, and broken furniture was piled against the walls. The faintest sound of something scraping against the concrete floor echoed through the room. Marcus froze, his heart skipping a beat. Was that a person? He quickly scanned the room with his flashlight. Nothing. The only movement came from the faint swaying of the old desks, as if they were shifting in the airless room. He shook his head. Just the pipes, he muttered, trying to convince himself. He bent down to grab a few folding chairs stacked near the back of the room. As he lifted them, the scraping noise came again, this time louder. Marcus froze again, his breath catching in his throat. His heart was pounding. He quickly turned around, flashing the beam of light down the long hallway. There was nothing, no one, but the feeling of being watched crept up on him, making the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. He didn't want to go any further. He wanted to grab the chairs, leave the basement, and never come back. But the job had to get done, so he shook his fear off and carried the first set of chairs out into the hallway toward the stairs. Just as he reached the stairs, a sudden, sharp gust of cold air brushed against his face. It was completely out of place. The basement was always warm and stale, without so much as a breeze. This felt like standing next to an open freezer. The flashlight in his hand flickered for a moment, but when it came back on, the temperature seemed to drop even further. He paused, his breath misting in the air in front of him. What was going on? He quickly set the chairs at the bottom of the stairs and hurried back down the hallway for the next load. The closer he got to the storage room, the more the sense of dread seemed to grow. It was as if the darkness itself was pressing in on him, the shadows longer and deeper than before. As he entered the room again, he felt it, an eerie pressure in the air, like something had shifted while he was gone. The stack of chairs was crooked, as though someone had touched them. He stepped closer, his flashlight beam shaking. A faint scraping noise came again, followed by the sound of something heavy being dragged along the floor. Marcus spun around. His flashlight caught a glimpse of movement, a shadow darting across the room, disappearing behind a stack of old desks. His pulse raced. This time, he wasn't imagining it. Something was in here with him. Panicking, Marcus dropped the chairs and bolted for the stairs. But as he reached the hallway, the door at the end of the corridor slammed shut. The force of it shook the walls. He turned toward the sound, his breath coming in short, quick gasps. From behind him, the scraping noise came again, louder, closer. It was moving toward him, slow and deliberate, like footsteps in the dark. He whipped around, his flashlight cutting through the darkness. But again, there was nothing, just shadows. That's when he heard it. A whisper, soft, almost too quiet to hear. He turned his head, but all he saw was the empty hallway. "Get out!" The voice was low, guttural, like it came from the walls themselves. Marcus screamed. The flashlight slipped from his hand, clattering to the floor as he sprinted for the stairs. His legs burned as he pushed himself up the stairs, 2 steps at a time. His heart was hammering in his chest, his lungs desperate for air. He didn't stop running until he was back in the main hallway. The basement door slammed shut behind him with a deafening bang. He gasped for air, his mind racing. What had just happened? He locked the door behind him, even though he wasn't supposed to, but he didn't care. He just needed to get out of there. As Marcus made his way to the front door, he couldn't shake the feeling of eyes on him, watching from the shadows. The whisper, the cold air, the footsteps, they were still with him, lingering in the corners of his mind. The school had been empty all night, but now it felt like it was alive, like something or someone was still lurking in the dark. Do you think Marcus was just imagining things? Or is there really something lurking in that basement? What do you think is in the shadows? Have you ever had a creepy experience in an old building? Share your stories in the comments below. What would you have done if you were Marcus? Would you have stayed to face whatever was down there? Or would you have run just like he did? If you enjoyed this terrifying story, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more chilling episodes. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss out on another haunting tale. Your support helps the channel grow, and we've got plenty more horror coming your way. Episode 3, The Abandoned Hotel. No one ever talks about the old Greystone Hotel anymore. It had been abandoned for years, its doors locked tight, its windows boarded up. But when Ethan, a curious urban explorer, hears rumors of a hidden room filled with treasures from the hotel's grand past, he decides to check it out for himself. What he doesn't know is that some places don't want to be uncovered, especially when the memories of what happened there are still alive, waiting to drag you back into their nightmare. Ethan had always been fascinated by abandoned places. There was something about the idea of uncovering forgotten history that intrigued him, and the Greystone Hotel had been on his list for a while. Rumors swirled around the building. People said it was cursed, haunted by the spirits of its tragic past. But none of that bothered Ethan. He didn't believe in ghosts, and besides, he'd been inside plenty of abandoned places before. This one would be no different. He parked his car on the deserted street, the hotel looming in front of him, its broken windows staring like hollow eyes. The old stone structure was more menacing in person than any photo he'd seen. The walls were covered in vines, and the once grand entrance was now a gaping hole, barely held together by rotting beams. It was late afternoon, the sun just beginning to set behind the horizon. Ethan grabbed his flashlight and camera, ready for what he hoped would be another routine exploration. The heavy wooden door creaked as Ethan pushed it open, the hinges protesting in a loud screech that echoed through the empty lobby. Dust covered everything, chairs, tables, the faded wallpaper peeling from the walls. The place had the musty smell of decay, the air thick with the stench of abandonment. As he stepped inside, the silence was deafening. The hotel seemed frozen in time. The grand staircase, once a symbol of wealth and luxury, now stood crooked, its steps rotting away. The chandeliers were shattered, the glass scattered across the floor like broken dreams. Ethan walked through the lobby, taking pictures of the worn furniture and forgotten relics. The deeper he went into the hotel, the more unsettling it felt. His flashlight flickered as he passed a hallway leading to the back of the building. Suddenly, he heard something, faint, almost like a whisper. He stopped in his tracks, listening intently. There was no one else here, just the sound of his own breathing. He shook his head, trying to convince himself it was nothing. The old building was probably settling, making noises. But as he turned to continue, he heard it again, louder this time. A whisper, soft and mournful, as if calling his name. Ethan. The voice was low and raspy, coming from somewhere behind him. His heart raced as he spun around, but there was no one there. Only the shadows stretching long and dark as the sun set behind the boarded-up windows. Ethan pushed forward, his nerves starting to edge toward fear, but he didn't want to back out now. He was here to uncover the hotel's secrets, and he was determined to find something that would prove the rumors true. As he moved deeper into the hotel, he found himself at the end of a long corridor. The hallway was narrow, its walls lined with old portraits of long-forgotten guests. The air grew colder the further he walked, and the whispering continued, like it was following him, guiding him. At the end of the hallway, he noticed a door, slightly cracked open. It was different from the other rooms, newer, sturdier, almost as if it had been sealed off intentionally. His curiosity got the better of him, and he approached the door, his heart pounding in his chest. He pushed it open. Inside, the room was dark, but there was something strange about the air in here. It was thick, oppressive, as if the room had been waiting for someone to enter. As Ethan stepped inside, he noticed the floor was covered with dust, but there were fresh footprints leading toward the center of the room. The whispers were louder now, coming from all directions. The walls seemed to close in around him, and the temperature dropped drastically. His flashlight flickered again, casting long shadows on the walls. And then he saw it, an old wooden chest in the center of the room. It was covered in cobwebs, its lock rusted shut. Ethan's curiosity got the better of him again, and he approached the chest, his hands trembling as he knelt down to examine it. As soon as his fingers touched the chest, the room seemed to come alive. The temperature dropped so fast he could see his breath in the air. The whispers grew louder, no longer soft murmurs but distinct voices, chanting in a language he couldn't understand. His pulse raced as he stood up, but as he did, the floorboards beneath him groaned. Something was shifting beneath the surface. He tried to back away, but the door slammed shut behind him with a deafening bang. The room was plunged into complete darkness. The only sound was the rising chorus of voices, now screaming his name. "Ethan, you shouldn't have come." He felt something cold brush against his skin, a cold hand. He spun around, but there was nothing there. The room was empty, yet he could feel it, the presence closing in on him. His breath came in shallow gasps as the walls seemed to press tighter around him. The chest creaked open on its own, and Ethan's heart stopped. Inside the chest was an old, tattered journal, its pages yellowed with age. The cover was embossed with a symbol he didn't recognize. But as he reached out to grab it, the room began to shake. The whispers turned to guttural, bone-chilling screams. Suddenly, the door flung open, and Ethan was thrown backward onto the floor, the journal slipping from his hand. He scrambled to his feet, but the room was no longer the same. The walls were closing in on him, the shadows twisting and writhing like they were alive. With no other choice, Ethan ran. He sprinted down the hallway, the dark figure of something or someone following him in the shadows. The hotel seemed endless now, the halls stretching on forever, the whispers echoing louder in his ears. Finally, Ethan reached the front door, but it wouldn't open. It was locked from the inside. Panic surged through him as he pulled and shoved against the door, his heart hammering in his chest. He could hear footsteps behind him, slow and deliberate. "Get out," the voice whispered again, right behind him. With one final, desperate push, the door flung open, and Ethan tumbled into the night. The air was cold, the moon high above him. He didn't look back as he ran, not stopping until he reached his car. Ethan never spoke of what happened at the Greystone Hotel. His friends laughed when he told them he'd left early, saying the building was just old and falling apart. But the whispers haunted him, following him wherever he went. Sometimes late at night, he still hears them. And no matter how hard he tries to convince himself it was just a dream, he knows deep down that something in that hotel didn't want to be found. What do you think was really behind the voices Ethan heard? Was it a curse or something else entirely? Have you ever explored an abandoned building and felt a presence watching you? Share your experiences in the comments. Would you have been able to leave, or would you have stayed to uncover the truth like Ethan? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this spine-chilling tale, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more terrifying stories. And don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss a new horror story. The darkest secrets are often the ones we're not supposed to uncover.